Hello, Jane.
Hello, Anthony. Shall I turn my camera? There we are.
Okay. So, you know, what's been coming up for me recently is this whole thing about contrast. And by
Yeah.
contrast, what I'm talking about contrast is the thoughts, feelings, stuff happening inside us that causes discomfort, that, you know, distracts me, that causes pain, that just doesn't feel good in relationship to things that are important.
Right.
Um, Does it make sense then?
Yeah.
Okay, so we all have key relationships to people, to health, to money, to jobs. And contrast is when there's a feeling or a sense of lack. Um, I don't have what I want,
Yeah.
or the outcome or the result is causing me to feel negative emotion. Let's put it that way. It's another way of calling it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you want something, you haven't got it, and that creates the negative emotion.
Yeah, and sometimes you only actually realize you want something because something causes us a negative reaction. Um, so it can be a, a conscious thing or something that just happens. Suddenly I find myself feeling um, uncomfortable, feeling insecure, nervous, feeling defensive, whatever it is. All of that is contrast. And if I look at my life, I've experienced contrast since I can remember. So we're talking now probably over 50 years, well over
Yeah.
50 years.
Yeah.
I'm probably running into 60 years plus of experience in contrast.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this already as a result in the past, this led to many things happening in my life, many decisions made, um, you name it. And I think this is common to a lot of people. What's been happening for me recently was a couple of things triggered it. And what came with it, with what I was feeling, was a sense also of originally disappointment. I was disappointed I was still feeling this or still experiencing this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
After so long in my life, I was still having that emotion. I was still having that feeling. So begin with, it was disappointment. And then I actually took it to another level. I decided to question and explore more of it. Where was it originating from in me? What was it all about? And it triggered a shame. I felt a sense of shame that I was feeling this in relationship, for example, to my two sons.
Yeah.
And I think shame's a very powerful experience. I think it's been pulled out of society now because of the way we've gone. But shame is essential to something to do with the evolution of our spirit, our soul, our conscience. So I sat with it. I didn't push it away. Do. I didn't reject it. I opened up to it. It was a conscious decision to just be with it and open up to it. And what was interesting was I felt something take place in my heart, in my energy. Um, there was a softening up taking place because I realized I don't want to have that experience going on of judgment and conditional love towards my sons. And,
Yeah.
that's not always easy to admit to ourselves that that's what we actually are doing because our defense, the human consciousness, the human ego's defense is so strong because it genuinely believes I'm doing this because I love them.
Yeah.
Um, but it was only through allowing myself to embrace what was happening, open up to it, kind of yield to it in a funny way, that I saw that actually, of course, I love them. But the truth is, in these moments, my love is being conditioned because of energy I'm holding or beliefs I'm still holding about who I am, who they are, and our relationship. And it's all physical stuff, if that makes any sense. That was what really started to trigger something for me. In other words, it was as a human being, I'm in a human body. Of course, I want to protect them. I want what's best for them. That's what the human being does. It's doing its job, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know. And I saw that and I acknowledged that and I said, yes, it is true. That strong sense of, but I love them is my physical being, the father doing his job. So I acknowledged that, which I don't often acknowledge um, that negative contrast. I don't often actually allow it to express itself to me. And I thought that was really interesting because I realized how important that is in the process. There's a wonderful expression from baseball called stealing second base. And
Right.
many years ago, when I was doing training to be an addictions counselor, my boss at the time, a wonderful man, used to use the expression most human beings, most addicts, most people who are dealing with dysfunction, depression, whatever you want to call it, are always trying to steal second base, meaning they don't go to first base, which is actually what is happening right now. Where am I standing? What am I experiencing right now?
Yeah.
And stay with that and use that. So even though we talked about the solution will never be with it, in terms of by focusing on the problem, but the solution still starts because there is something causing me pain, a problem.
Yeah.
That's when I start changing my perception. And, in a funny way, when I changed my perception and decided to embrace and appreciate the contrast that I was feeling, even though it was awful to begin with, when I realized just how much negativity I was holding in relationship to my sons. But as soon as I started to embrace it and to acknowledge it and engage with it in a context of, I know this is not what I want. And I know this is not who I really am. But right now, this is where I'm standing on first base.
Yeah.
Um, and that's when like I said, I could feel in my heart something open up, and I felt a sense of the love that I feel. And I thought, okay, so now I'm choosing to understand that this is not who I am. Because actually, I have to understand we do not have control over anyone else. And that is such a key aspect of the human condition, wanting to control everything, our environment and everyone else.
Yeah.
We've talked about that, but it's so powerful and so deep.
Yeah.
It is not possible. It defies gravity of this universe, defies everything that is actually logical. But only, I know this. And then I realized, Anthony, it's time to actually really integrate some of this stuff, integrate it in a way that this healing, it takes place in me, because that's the energy that they will pick up, because they are picking it up. They are picking up, and this is what kids are picking up all the time in relationship to their parents. This is what people are picking up all the time in society. They're picking up a different message from the message that's been verbalized. What's been verbalized is, we care for you. We're doing this for you. The government are even doing this. We're making these
Yeah.
decisions for you. This went on with the coronavirus and all this kind of nonsense, COVID and everything. We're making decisions for you. Well, you can't in this universe.
Mm.
It's actually not possible. And it was just it was a magical moment because it wasn't comfortable, and I'm still dealing with that. I noticed that it led me to open up to many other relationships I've had in my life, going back to my father. I saw that I still carry disappointment in me. It's still down there somewhere. I still was feeling um let down. I was still feeling some anger about stuff, not like I have for I'm talking about it at such a totally different level from what I experienced 30 years ago. But it was still there. It was still affecting my relationship with my wife. It still affects the way I look at life, is what I'm saying. My
Mm,
perception,
mm.
and as soon as I started to allow myself to appreciate where I was at, I started to see the bigger picture in a way I've never seen it before. I realized just how much well-being. You remember I used the expression that thank God we are porous, meaning the source energy, our spirit actually comes through us in spite of ourselves. This happens to everyone, even
Yeah.
if it's only for a brief moment. The mere fact that someone may live 20 minutes, an hour, 10 years, 30 years means their source energy is coming through them. Otherwise, they would not be alive. All right. And I
Yeah. Right.
realized, but I realized, for myself, just how much well-being, how much abundance, how much goodness has been there, how much love has been there, and how many times the universe has saved me, has rescued me, has delivered me from evil. And
Yeah.
I was able to appreciate it and see it in a way I don't think I've ever done it before. But it started with embracing the contrast and realizing without contrast, we cannot expand while we're in the physical. And there's a lot of contrast in the world right now. And it's obviously a dividing factor because of politics, but
So
the detail of what's happening is not the issue.
no, so are you saying that there is one of the things that you started off with was the fact that you find out that there's something that you want when you're having a contrasting experience to that, in the
Correct.
sense that you've got a negative emotion. Is there something, because and then you said a bit later on, you said that you've been experiencing this for, your lifetime, really. So is there, are you saying that contrast is something over and above negative emotions?
No, negative emotion is part of contrast because negative emotion is like an inbuilt guidance system, if you want to call it. And that's what Esther Hicks calls it. It's our inbuilt guidance system telling us that right now, my energy, because remember, negative emotion is energy in motion.
Yeah.
It's in my energy field, my vibration, in other words. That's what my vibration is. That's the vibration I'm offering up to the universe. That's what negative
Yeah.
emotion is. So it's saying to me right now, where you're standing at first base, stop trying to get to second base before you've been at first base properly. First base right now is your vibration you're offering in relationship to the thing you want is not going to, it's not going to bring you a happy ending because it's an unhappy
Right. So
emotion.
the difference between negative emotion is like your dashboard, your information point of the fact that
Correct.
you're in contrast to what it is you want, but
Yes.
it's not just feeling bad. You're what you said is that you have to explore your perspective and understanding of your relationship with the thing that you want in order to shift. And what I hear you
Yeah, but
saying,
without not getting too much into over analyzing, meaning what people are doing, people who go to therapy and people who go to whatever it is they go to, and people right now, there's a lot of people in the world right now who are looking outside of themselves to under for the explanation. They're looking for reasons as to why I feel this.
yeah,
Do you
yeah,
understand? And the
yeah,
reasons are there.
yeah,
That's not what exploring it is. Exploring it or investigating actually is where's it coming from in me? And only when I really get that it's coming from my consciousness,
sure. And that's what I
not
get. That's what I get, Anthony, is that's what I get. It's you explored your consciousness in relation to what you were feeling in relation to your boys. And
Yes,
but I also hear, and I might have got this wrong, but I also heard that you were saying you acknowledged your role as their father, and their and within that you were having contrast because you want the very best for them and you love them and you
correct.
accept that. You
Yes,
accepted that experience and felt love for the whole situation, for yourself, for your boys, for the whole situation, because that aspect, the fact that it might be a manifestation of your love, that's you can accept that.
correct. But it also leads to another bit of understanding, which is, you see, we've talked about this. The basic human interpretation of love is incredibly dangerous and dysfunctional. It's not love. It's at best it's sentiment, but
Yeah.
at most it's conditional control, and that's a very important thing to understand. I like the fact that um, Esther Hicks, Abraham, Francis Hosian, Linda, others use appreciation to replace love in our own vocabulary, because appreciation is very different. Um, it leads to a different energy field, a different vibration, because we've used the word love. You see, so I love my kids, which almost has me feel as a human being that I have a right to do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I understand that. And I, obviously have gone into it. I'm just wanting to clarify that, because very often people can't get past that because they fear that, what are you saying, that I shouldn't love my kids? No,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. What I'm saying is you need to expand your consciousness, your vibration around what love is, if you want to use that word. You
Yeah.
really need to understand that until love is unconditional, meaning without any form of control, without any form of I know what's best, without any form of you could do better because I think you could, without any feeling of angst in it. Otherwise, it's not love. It's human sentiment, it's control. But yes, what you're saying is I had to acknowledge that, of course, as a parent, I love them and I want what's best. So I needed to get back to the love that was always there, but the universal love, the love of the universe, of the source, of the one
Yeah.
vibration that creates all, is unconditional. It does not know control. It doesn't, it actually, in a funny way, I'm trying to find another word because people often use the word doesn't care, but that sounds harsh, because care is a human experience. But what it
Yeah.
is just, it just is.
Yeah.
It just is. It just is what it is. But it doesn't change the law of the universe, which is what I vibrate, I will create more of. So what I'm vibrating is a negative towards my kids. And then I wonder why they have that in their energy field, even though they're not me. And they've got it. They'll pick it up. And this is what is so important for me to understand and integrate, which is when I get to that place of genuine unconditional love of myself while I'm going through, and the love of the situation and the love of them, and letting them be, let them be.
Yeah.
That's when they pick up a very different vibration. In other words, the only vibration that we have to connect to, keeps coming back to it for me, is that there is only a vibration of well-being in this universe. There is nothing else. Well-being manifests itself in, if you want to call abundance, in just general good. But while I'm holding anything, even if it was justifiable, because there's a lot of justifiable negative emotion going on this planet today,
Sure.
enormous amount of it, right?
Sure.
The problem is, out of it, nothing good can come.
No.
And we keep trying to defy the universe, as opposed to the simple process of just getting back to appreciation. Why appreciation is a miracle is because if I'm genuinely appreciating, meaning I'm releasing the fear, the hurt, the anger, whatever it is, the disappointment, as I'm appreciating that all is well in
Yeah.
this relationship, all is well in my body, all is well in my death.
Yeah.
Okay. And the death, even the death of my ego, meaning my identity, feeling that I, as a father, it's my right to do what I'm doing. You see,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people right now who feel that there's a human rights is a big thing. You know, they have the right to do this, they have the right to do that. And yes, they do, as long as they understand the bigger picture. But going back to contrast, and I said to you this morning, contrast is so powerful because regardless of where we are standing right now, every one of us uniquely standing at a different place. There are 7 billion plus people on this planet who are standing at a different place right now. And if they looked inside and observed and became more aware of what they are really vibrating, what they are feeling in their energy field,
Yeah.
they will see there's a contrast. And the contrast is giving birth to the desire of something they want. It could be peace. It could be more love. It could be more acceptance. It could be more belonging. It could be more better health. It could be more money. It could be a better job. It does. Everyone's a different place because circumstances and the environment we're in will trigger different contrast. There's no right or wrong, and there's no one having the same one. It's not possible. But what's happening in the world is no one is seeing this. You know, when I say no one, for the most part, there's not, you know, this is everyone's going around believing that it's something still external doing it.
Yeah.
And it's only, you know, for me, I just understand more and more that it really does start with me in my life. And that's where it ends. And
Yes.
that is the art of absolute selfishness. But it's so important. Now, does that mean I'm not part of a community? I'm not part of this? Of course not. But we keep thinking we can bring our brokenness and fix a broken world because that's what we believe exists.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there with an unhealthy body, with my vibration unhealthy, my consciousness unhealthy, and I think that I can find God or someone to heal me. It's insane.
Yeah.
All right. And the same insaneness applies to something simple where I'm just wanting something good for my kids. And right now, my level of attachment that I'm experiencing because of the emotion I'm experiencing has me think that if I shout louder or I get in their face more or I talk to them more or I encourage them more, even encourage them more, you're still going to do it. Okay? Because that's the world we live in today. The world we live in today is tell them they're great even when their behavior sucks. All right?
Yeah. You're right there. Yeah.
You know, they can't play a sport at school, but to tell them they're doing great, as opposed to, look, hey, you can't play it, it's okay.
Yeah.
But there is something you probably could do, you know. But you know, it's insane what we're doing.
I agree. I agree.
Okay. You know, yesterday I saw something happen at school. My boys were playing baseball, and there was another game of baseball going on in the other field, and one of the team's coaches refused to wear his helmet, which is something you have to do because obviously he's on the field and he could get hit by a ball.
Yeah.
So he decided to storm off and take his whole team of 12 teenagers off the field. And I was standing there and they were all walking past me and I could see how much disappointment they were having. And I asked them what was going on and they told me what was going on. And it was extraordinary to witness this. And I remember turning around, there were about 4 or 5 other kids, teenagers standing there and they were watching this and they were talking about it. And I turned around to them, I said, isn't it amazing what happens when you give an adult too much responsibility, how they screw things up?
Yeah.
Because a group of kids, teenagers playing the game, would know that you have to wear a helmet and there would be no issue. But this is going on at every level of our government, of our society. You give people with very dysfunctional egos,
Yeah.
in the name of God and everything else, authority to make decisions, and no wonder nothing works. And we can't, and then we just get angry and we blame each other. It's actually quite funny to observe it. It's so insane.
That's incredible that he did that. I
You
mean,
know,
that,
and then what happened is they were sort of literally all leaving the, you know, the premises. And I think another coach arrived and said, don't worry, I'll come and wear the helmet and do it for you.
yeah,
But it was, you know, it was just a great example of what's going on every day all around us in our society.
that's incredible.
And contrast is just, you know, I'm practicing now falling in love with it. And it's a very weird concept for me. Loving that what's
Contrast.
going on inside me is not what I want. Okay.
Yeah,
But it's a different, you know, it's a different kind of falling in love with it. I'm starting to have a relationship with it, but also understanding I am not a physical being and I'm not looking to fix the physical energy. I'm looking to connect with the one non-physical vibration that creates and responds to everything in this universe. That's a very important part of it.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm
And
looking,
what I hear you saying, Anthony, is that you're developing a relationship of appreciation with the contrast that you're experiencing. Because
yeah,
it is like Esther said, it is like information.
yeah.
It is
And it,
information. And so, yeah, give me some more information, and then you can do some more inquiry and you can get another understanding of who you are and what you want and what vibration you need to be extending into the world.
correct. But what's so important to take within that is at the same time holding the understanding I am not just a physical being.
Yeah.
Without that context, without that information, without that awareness, it
Mhm.
actually will have very short-term results. That's why
Yeah.
positive thinking on its own only goes so far. Because positive, you see, as soon as I start, until I really get that I'm not my thoughts, my feelings, my body. I'm in the body. I'm not saying I'm not. I am dad. So be easy on myself about that. Be kind to myself because where I'm coming from is a good place. I am. I'm not saying everyone is. I know I am. All right.
Yeah.
But I have to understand that to expand my consciousness, my awareness, and therefore my vibration, I need to change my perception and incorporate within it that I am not God in their lives. They are two universal beings that have come in to physical bodies and given me the privilege of being their guardian. And I need to understand they have their path, and their path may be different from what I think it should be.
Yeah.
And when I incorporate all of this and I kind of start making peace with all of this through appreciation, and my consciousness expands. And that's also why I said to you earlier that contrast is so important because if we don't learn how to embrace the contrast we're experiencing every day as physical beings, our consciousness, our awareness cannot expand, which is what this whole universe is based on, expansion. And that's why for many people, lifetime after lifetime continues with suffering because we're not expanding our awareness. We're not expanding our consciousness. So every time we come back into play another role in the physical body, whatever that role is, we start off almost back where we left last time.
Yeah.
And that to me is such an important part of understanding it. And that's what true karma is, in my opinion, by the way, just my opinion, is it's not, you know, I can go around doing good deeds, thinking and feeling inside all the stuff going on and doing it all out of, I believe that if I do all these deeds, I will get to heaven. I'm going to go to heaven anyway, whatever that means. All right. But, you know, because I'm going to die. And when we die, we go back to the spiritual realm. And in that realm, we know unconditional love. We know who we are in relationship to the source. So whatever happens, we're all going back there. All right. But the karma, I believe, is the expansion of our consciousness. If I'm going to stay stuck as really believing that my little human experience is the one, and I have a right to be angry and upset and protest and fight and kill and do all that stuff in the name of God, well, that's why after 50,000 years of history, man is still repeating the same things, and we wonder why
Yeah.
nothing's changed. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should just look at, don't worry what I'm saying. I'm an idiot. All right. What I would do is have a look at the world, look at history, do a bit of reading of it, see if you can look at it objectively, get out of your tribe, get out of your where you stand right now, the whole time in your tribe and your political standpoint, and look at history and see how it keeps repeating itself. And
Yeah.
maybe remind yourself you've possibly been there at some other time doing it or been done too, depending where you are now.
Yeah.
But none of this,
I mean, that's so, I think that's so difficult to get, that what you're talking about, because people do so want to make a difference, or, because being locked into the fact that you're right about the situation, whatever the wider situation is a very compelling state of mind, evidently. If you look at everybody, you think, oh, people are so attached to their viewpoint and their focus point and their perspective on life, and why things don't work and why other people are wrong and so on and so forth. I mean, it's the evolution of the soul in the way that you're talking about
yeah, it is. But,
is,
but, but let's go back to what you just said. Everyone wants to make a difference
yeah,
wherever they're standing right now. And that's
yeah,
true. In their humanness, they want to make a difference.
yeah,
But when you truly investigate it, what you're experiencing, the contrast, when you experience what's really going on in your emotions, your energy field, and really look where it's coming from inside yourself, and get out of the blaming and get out of looking outside of yourself, and you go through releasing the judgment about what you're experiencing, and you keep looking in, you'll come back to that point where you will have to find inside yourself that it's all about control and the belief system that something outside of me is a threat to me. That's
yeah,
what it always comes back to. What they're doing is a threat to my existence. I noticed there's a kid who plays baseball with my boys. Okay. I mean, this is embarrassing to say, but I'm going to say it. There's a kid who plays baseball with my boys, and he's terrible. He will never
yeah,
be a good baseball player. He even says it himself. But
right,
that I noticed inside me, I have an energy that is not wanting him to be enormously successful and doesn't want him to be great. Okay. And when I sat with that and I felt the shame of that, I thought, you know, God, Anthony, is this who you really want to be?
yeah,
No, of course I don't want to be that. But I had to embrace it for a while. I had to stay at first base and feel it and realize this is not who I want to be. He's not a threat to my boys. Even the good players aren't a threat to my boys because that's the belief system the human being operates out of. Of course, I do as a father. As a physical being, I will always believe in threat. That's just what is.
yeah,
I have to expand my consciousness to understand there is nothing in this universe that threatens any one of us. It's not physically possible. It really
yeah.
isn't. Okay.
It
But
is
we,
so
but
it's so difficult to get that, though,
I
when
know.
you're when
I,
you've been sort of hardwired for
I know.
survival, at your in your primitive brain, you're still hardwired for
Yeah,
survival.
I understand.
Actually to get out of that reactionary way
I
of
know.
thinking is
It takes quite a bit.
it does.
Yeah, I listen. I don't disagree with that. Hey, um, but it doesn't change the fact that still may be what is so. In other words, the what so is if I always am only going to see, I need to change my perception. The what so is this universe is based on vibration, and the moment I start appreciating, I'm already shifting my vibration that I'm putting out to the universe.
Yeah,
But if I'm not willing to do it, don't expect a different outcome. That's all I'm saying.
yeah,
It's there isn't right or wrong. There isn't even a moral issue about this. It's just what's so. And there's enough evidence around all of us to prove this. if people would only look. You
Yeah.
know, the wonderful thing that I have in terms of feedback from my two sons is they often will say to me, they've experienced this on a daily basis. Okay. My son will tell me that if he goes into baseball to try and hit the ball, and what's going on inside him is the tightness, the fear, all that stuff, if he's not aware of it and he's not willing to acknowledge it and just let it be and remember who he is, he knows what the result's going to be. I mean, that's just a simple little thing that's important to him. But soon as I've seen him step out of the box. Anyone who knows baseball will know what I'm talking about. After swinging and missing, you know, the umpire gives him a little timeout, and I've seen him do a process and then come out and crush the ball. And then afterwards, he'll tell me what he remembered to do. He remembered to, you know, metaphorically be on first base and giggle at what was going on inside himself and let it be, not resist it, not judge himself, and just remember who he really is and who the creative force in him is, which is his broader self, his spiritual self, and the universal energy. And as soon as he started to appreciate what was going on, suddenly he looked like a hitter. It's
Oh,
unbelievable how quickly the miracle happens as soon as we change our perception and we start appreciating.
wow. That is
And
just,
I know that, and I know everyone to some extent experiences this, but often we just don't realize what we've done in that moment. Okay.
that's so, I'm going to take that into my day.
You know, and I
That is
noticed
fantastic.
I had one of the most peaceful days I've ever had yesterday, right? I was not at war with the world. I was not at war with my wife. I wasn't at war with myself, and I therefore wasn't at war with God.
Yeah.
And in the end, you know, it was just I went to bed and it was so peaceful. Now that you know, within that there were moments where I felt vulnerable. I felt exposed because I wasn't holding on to my defenses. I was letting them be. I was aware of them and I was just appreciating that I'm living in a physical body and therefore I have contrast. It's just what is so. Okay. The feelings that sometimes it's unfair are irrelevant, but they're there. Okay. The feelings that sometimes I wish that, you know, the God I believed in would be more responsive. And then I suddenly realized, well, actually, the universe is responding because I've been asking for a long time to understand the workings of the universe. I've been asking for a long time, many, you know, over 50 years, I've been asking for a relationship with God. All right.
Mm,
It's only of late I started to understand God has always responded because what got stronger in me was the contrast.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
mean that. Okay. I really mean that. The contrast got stronger. But and all the teachers I turned to, and all the books I turned to, and all the gurus I turned to, and all the religion I turned to made it worse.
That's so funny.
That's the wonderful thing about all these things. They actually, because soon as someone starts seeking God, God answers. Promise you. That happens. But just look at your contrast and you'll see God's answering you. The universe is responding. It's telling you, I'm here. When are you going to start listening to me? Pay attention.
Mm,
Expand your awareness. And that's a beautiful thing.
yes. Fantastic, Anthony. Thank you.
Nice to talk again.
Yeah, nice to talk to you too.
Um, and we'll talk offline later.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye bye.